Hello everyone and welcome to the Alabama Museum of Natural History's virtual National Fossil Day event. My name's Allie Sorley and I work here at the museum as the Education Outreach Coordinator, and today we are joined by Dr. Doug Phillips, creator and host of Discovering Alabama. So Dr. Doug, can you tell me a little bit about Discovering Alabama, what it is and when it got its start?
It's of course a television series, and I don't mean that totally in jest, because we're approaching our 40th year. We're now among the longest running TV programs in television history. And of course the title gives it away, Discovering Alabama. And I came by that title honest enough after pioneering so many of the first outdoor programs for teachers in Alabama. You know, taking them up the mountains and down the rivers and into the wilds, and they approached me after a great day one time and said, "This has been so inspiring. Now I know how to make connections with the real world for my kids, you know, and get them outdoors." And we talked a little bit, and they realized we were hitting on two very important themes for schooling: discovering and local relevance. Discover your state, you know, discover Alabama. Only we were actively discovering it, and so we went with the name Discovering Alabama because every show is out there actually doing it, you know. And so we started the series, Allie, with some kind of grand topics that were pretty much the places and the repeat of the routes I used to take the teachers on. So, you know, we did the Sipsey Wilderness. Oh, they always got wore out on that outing. We did Little River Canyon, you know. We did some of those grand things, and as you might suspect, sorry to say, apparently a lot of Alabamians didn't know we even had those kinds of things. And so pretty quick the show was an impressive thing for the average viewer. And APT, Alabama Public Television, said, well, continue doing it. And then the teachers said, yes, and try to make sure you're covering the science requirements and the social studies requirements. So, funny story, when we started it, I would just, you know, I was going on my lifetime of experience roaming Alabama, and I would call the camera crew and say, meet me so-and-so. We'll start in a little while, you know, and I would outline content on the way. We didn't have a script. We had fun doing stuff, you know, and it was still a smash hit. But after the teachers weighed in, I had to start scripting in advance to make sure, you know, some things were covered. And as time went by, the show got to be in pretty big demand.
So I've heard that Discovering Alabama has a fossil episode that they're working on, and I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about it, how you came to the topic of the fossil show, and why you chose to do that episode.
So we're celebrating National Fossil Day, of all things. I don't know how long we've had a National Fossil Day, but luck might have it, we have been going around for years thinking someday we're going to do a show on Alabama fossils. Because actually people do not realize how rich Alabama's fossil heritage is. And a couple of years ago we decided to start working on it. As we were shooting other shows, we would stop by and pick up a location thing on this fossil site or that fossil site, accumulating footage. And we decided to go ahead and try to pull it all together this year, and it just happens to dovetail with celebrating National Fossil Day. Actually, in addition to showcasing the little known fact that Alabama has such a rich fossil heritage, we wanted to use the show, what I started thinking about years ago, to present our own museum, the Alabama Museum of Natural History, and the historical role it's had in the whole field of fossil paleontology and archaeology and natural history is what we're talking about, the Alabama Museum of Natural History. One of the earliest museums of natural history in the nation. And so we're past due to make a program about the fossil heritage. And it's a 1-2 purposes, showcase the fossil richness of the state, and let the world know about the role of the Alabama Museum of Natural History. We're floating some other boats too. I mean, you know, our museum is not the only one in the state, and so we would like the world to realize that Alabama has several really nice facilities for going and learning about natural history and fossils.
Does this episode, the new fossil episode, does it in any way relate back to the previous Discovering Alabama episodes of the geologic time of Alabama and the tracks across time?
And our fossil show is not the first one we've done to deal with fossils in Alabama or the geological history of Alabama. In fact, one of our early shows is entitled The Geological History of Alabama, and it traces the whole time span of how Alabama came to be in context with how the earth came to be. And it's I think, a really nice show. It's got some awards, and it does present the scientific view of the earth being 5 billion plus years old, and geologic time in Alabama plays out across all these big eras and periods. And I always get a nice sweet letter from somebody at the end that says, "You said the earth is 5 billion years old. My pastor says 6,000, you know," and I always answer them back, and you'll love my response. And I always say, "Well, I wasn't there, so I can't say personally, but I'm sending you a gift copy of the show so you can see that it's the scientists who are giving us this kind of stuff." And you know, while I'm bragging on our show about the geological history, we do traipse through all the eras and things, and we kind of touch on all this again in our fossil show coming up, because you have to explain how the fossils develop, when, and why there's a diversity of fossils. But I'll answer folks like that back and send them a free show, and invariably I get another response, and they're so grateful. And they learn a lot, and they become fans of Discovering Alabama. So, and in addition to that show, yeah, one of our more recent ones is called Tracks Across Time. And you, of course, are familiar with that site up there outside of Jasper. It was an old coal mine, and they started stripping the top off, and people started seeing, well, what are all these strange things in the rocks? And they were fossilized tracks where prehistoric creatures had swam and walked and stuff, and you know, and the oddness of geology, some major event happened and trapped the mud flats and those kinds of things, and they fossilized. And for that time period in geological history is one of the most significant trackways sites on planet Earth, right here in Alabama. So we've done that one. And then we're laughing at some of the footage from old shows. I canoed the Locust Fork River back in the day, going back to my old childhood home site. And it goes through some rugged mountain country, and you get down in certain layers where there's, you know, sandstone, limestone, and old coal strata. And we got this giant calamites, which, you know, is a fossilized plant from the coal ages. And I'm in the canoe in the river doing a fossil story about the calamites. And actually, you work that in our new fossil show, just so people can see how darn old I've gotten up since those days. And a couple other clips from old shows that involve fossils. All of which, as we say in the show, is just to reinforce the significance of natural history and geological time and the wonder of Alabama.
So you just told that story about you in the canoe at in the Locust Fork with the piece of calamites, and you were talking to everyone and telling them about, you know, what this fossil was that was in your hands. Do you hope that maybe you know, an outcome from this new fossil show could be that people are connecting to fossils that maybe they've found on their own while they're exploring Alabama?
Our fossil show, I guess another purpose of it is hopefully to excite people about the intrigue. We use that word in the show, you know, the intrigue of discovering the past life, ancient life forms of Alabama. And actually, the show includes a number of experts who built their life off of studying natural history and paleontology. And invariably, they all got their start in this world of intrigue as children who found something, you know, and got inspired by it. And we work all that in, and hopefully to kind of culminate by inspiring viewers to go, wow. And, you know, and along the way, over the years, Allie, of course, I'm sure you have too. All of us who work here at the museum have gotten these photos and now computer sent or cell phone sent things. People wanting us to identify that as the most ancient fossil, rare, and it's usually some strange rock. And you just don't know how to tell them it's just a rock. But at least they're out there and they're looking and they're, you know, and they're getting their hands on and finding stuff. And if they keep up that interest, you know, they are going to come away with, wow, what Alabama has, you know. You may know this. Just about the time geology was becoming a science, what was that, back in the late 1700s or something, over in Europe. About the time it formalized as a real science, some of the first professional geologists were looking to try to come to Alabama because the word was already out. Some of the early folks who kind of traipsed through here were talking about so much geological diversity in this one region. And so we were on the map pretty early with that, but it really wasn't until our own museum got cranked up that, in kind of combination with the Geological Survey of Alabama folks, it all goes back to about the same time frame, that this started really being, you know, studied. And for those who may not know, you know, this is Smith Hall. Our museum is in Smith Hall, named after Eugene Allen Smith, who in the 1800s roamed this state, pad in hand, documenting things. And so much of what he discovered we have. And we've got this, of course, wonderful scientific collections building that joins us kind of across the parking lot with some of the world's best, and certainly the South's best collections of paleo material and other natural history artifacts.
When you are putting a show together, like this fossils one, after you get the idea, where do you go? How do you start?
You know, this is a true story. I have the opposite dilemma. There's so many topics. There's so many ideas we can pursue. It becomes a matter of which one are we going to do next? Which one fits the need now? And that has played out rather remarkably over the years. I'm not making this up. I have woke up at 3 a.m. sometimes going, I need to do this topic now. Locust Fork River show, returned to my old home place. I woke up, I've been thinking about that show for a long time. I said, we need to do it now. We did it, it aired, it wowed all the local people about what an impressive thing they had, and about a week later or two, the Birmingham Waterworks Board announced plans to impound the stream. Just inundate it, cover it up. One of the nation's most dramatic wild river streams, and well, local folks kind of got organized in a hurry. It's a long story, but they got that stopped. And so anyway, point being, there's such a wealth of topics to draw from. It's a matter of picking one, you know, that suits the need at the time. In recent years, well, the last couple of years, the state has come and begged us, well, politely, to do shows that fit the bicentennial, you know, Alabama's bicentennial. So we did a few shows I might not have gotten around to do, like the story of our state capitals from place to place to place, although we tied it to those capitals being located near key natural features, usually rivers, you know. So, and the one we did on Alabama State Archives, they asked me to do that. I said, how am I going to do a Discovering Alabama about a building, you know? Well, I invite viewers to watch it because the building I, as host, am in is a big barn in the middle of a cornfield. And we're telling the story of Alabama's historical archive collections at the State Archives in History in Montgomery. A remarkable show, garnered Emmy Awards.
I imagine in this show, in this type of show, this fossil show, that there's a lot of on-location shooting, just like in a lot of Discovering Alabama shows, or all of the Discovering Alabama shows. But me personally, having visited some of the sites that I think you're going to talk about, I can't even imagine what it's like taking all these really heavy camera equipment, up and down the gullies of Harrell Station, for example. Is that type of filming, is that a challenge for a show like this?
Yeah, so Discovering Alabama was all out there in the outdoors, way back in the wilds. And then with our fossil show, places that you got to go to get to, And it can be difficult. I got a four-wheel drive truck. We try to use those kind of vehicles, And in our fossil show, that site that our museum owns, Harrell Station, called Harrell Station, down there in the Selma Chalk. You go there the right weather conditions, it's still a struggle. You got to carry gear way back and up and down, and Harrell Station is like Alabama's moonscape. And if you watch the fossil show, you'll see it. It is just eroded, barren, but beautiful in its own stark beauty, But it's uncovered fossils from one side to the other almost, But the difficult challenge about any time going to Harrell Station is if it's wet, that clay gets like, that chalky stuff, or if it's 100-degree summer. Either way, it'll beat you up. And so we try not to go at those times. But it's still, it's a lot of physical effort. Not as bad as some, though. Our cameraman, Mark Harper, will tell you about carrying gear miles back into some wilderness area.
How do you go about communicating these intricate and deep topics with your television audience? How do you make this kind of information accessible to the people that are watching your show?
We have, a mission to communicate effectively. When I first started Discovering Alabama, most Alabamians didn't pay attention to public television, And we crafted the show just the way I used to be growing up. We're going to go to the woods, and we're going to be quiet. We're going to observe, and we're going to be wowed by what we find, because Alabama's got that to offer. And apparently that was working, because Alabamians were starting to like what they were seeing, and they were learning about stuff they didn't know we had. But we sort of kept it soft sell, so to speak, because I deliberately did not want to give some British narrated, high-sounding academic scientific thing. There was plenty of those. Nobody in Alabama, at least, liked to watch that stuff anyway. So we, I hate to say dumbed it down. We didn't dumb it down. We reshaped it some, and frankly, the way that was comfortable for me, the way I take teachers out and talk to them. And once we started getting popular, I started strengthening the approach a little bit. Inviting the viewers to step up with us something a little more scientific. Classical music. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget the time I got a phone call from some guy and said, "Who is that beautiful music?" And I said, "Rachmaninoff." And he said, "Rock who?" Anyway, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, go ask somebody. But anyway, and in recent years, we're actually, as the old saying goes, kind of putting the hay down where the goats can get to it. Some pretty serious, reflective, philosophical, and the science can be pretty strong at times too. But we are still for the general public, and I don't ever want to become a high-sounding British narrated, weighty, totally academic thing. Even though, funny but true story, sometimes when we do include scientists in our shows and we interview them, and they have given us the whole dissertation to explain, the cosmos, and they ended up with a 15-second piece, they're not really happy about that. Because, We're apparently not being scientific in our presentation. Well, we just have to live with it because we know the viewers are following what we got and they would not follow other. So we write teacher guides to put all that other in there. Well, I write them. I'm bragging, but write them driving from point A to point B. Don't tell anybody, but I don't have time. But anyway, I put the kind of more in-depth information. If somebody wants to go to purchase a book that explains all, we reference it, that kind of thing. So,
if people want to see this fossil episode or any of the other episodes that we talked about, how do they access Discovering Alabama? How do they find you? How do they see the episodes? How do they see your shows?
So for those who want to find out about the shows, who want to get the shows, we're on discoveringalabama.org, and when they go on it, they can see all the show titles, and if they know how the link can go to where we make them available for viewing, they can watch the shows. Let me quote parenthetically what teachers tell me. They say one of the best things about Discovering Alabama is full-length feature. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. The teachers say, I can teach conceptual thought, I can teach writing, I can teach, making sense of the world, And then I still run into some of those teachers who say, well, can't you do a little short thing that goes right to the point, And I say, nope, not going to do that. Let the rest of y'all who are eager in shortening our short attention span further. Y'all can do that. Discovering Alabama is going to be what it is. Amen. Hallelujah.